Today we're talking about a bullet, a man, a human bullet. It's time for Bulletman. Bulletman's path to Adventure Team, G.I. Joe, and Action Man is rather unique and was met with some real bumps on the road to toy store shelves. But before we get into the story, if you could kindly hit the subscribe button, we are on the road to 50k, we're super close, helps the video and the channel by feeding the algorithm. Okay, so who the hell is Bulletman? First stop, 1964. This is a year when Lyndon B. Johnson was the US president and America was still reeling from and mourning the loss of President John F. Kennedy in November of 63. The summer of 64 is when the Vietnam War kicked off. It was amidst this landscape that G.I. Joe debuted in all its 11.5-inch glory. 4 years later, the line expanded when talking dolls were introduced, and the following year, 1969, when all of the branches of the US military at the time got representation. There was no Space Force then. At the start of the new decade, 1970, Hasbro introduced the Adventure Team. 4 years after that, the iconic Kung Fu Grip was rolled out. 1975 was when Atomic Man hit toy store shelves. Mike Power Atomic Man is a direct competitor to Kenner's $6 Million Man. These had followed the popularity of Mattel's Big Jim. Around this time, we also got old Shifty Eyes, the Eagle-Eyed Joe, and a direct answer to Migo's superhero line. And that answer was Bulletman. It would be short-lived though, because after Super Joe was introduced in 77, the line was discontinued in 1978 and would remain shelved until the Hasbro team partnered with Shooter's team at Marvel Comics to reintroduce G.I. Joe in an all-new look and an all-new Star Wars-inspired size. Per the United States Federal Trade Commission, quote, in 1978, Hasbro paid a $40,000 civil penalty to settle charges over its allegedly deceptive advertising for Digger Dog and Bulletman toys. It wouldn't be their last time either. They had to pay a $175,000 civil penalty for deceptive advertising over Eco Warriors and the Battlecopter. This, coupled with the price of petroleum and the waning popularity of the line following the Vietnam War, it all served as a catalyst for the marketing machine being wound down and the line shelved. But let's back up this bus a little bit. Back to Bulletman. This wasn't the first time that Hasbro had gone after Migo. You see, once G.I. Joe hit in 64, over 7 million dolls, yes they're dolls, were sold after they'd spent upwards of $4 million in advertising. Adjusted for inflation, that's $40 million in 2024 dollars. That's when Migo decided to capitalize on their competitor's success, and they rolled out the Fighting Yank. Just as Marissa Tomei revealed that a Corvette and Pontiac Tempest had pause traction, as revealed by equal tire marks on the ground, freeing Billy's 64 Buick Skylark from guilt, Hasbro got Migo on the matching thumbs. While Mona Lisa was only partially right, Hasbro was completely right and won their case. So a few years later, Hasbro hit them again, right in the market share, with Bulletman. Here's where it gets a little messy. And now we go from 64 and the 1970s back to 1941 and Fawcett Comics. During the golden age of comics, one of the many successful publishing companies was Fawcett Publications and their Fawcett Comics line. Billy Batson, by the way, came from Fawcett. He was Captain Marvel back then, which led to Fawcett and DC Comics clashing. DC said that Billy, aka Shazam, was a copy of Superman. Fawcett was going out of business, and per the VP of Fawcett at the time, they didn't want to waste money fighting the lawsuit. DC won that in 51, and then in the mid-50s, 1953, Fawcett licensed their characters out to Charlton Comics, and then DC Comics bought Charlton Comics, famously using characters like Blue Beetle, Peacemaker, The Question, and Captain Atom, many of whom debuted in the mid-80s Crisis on Infinite Earths event. Fawcett Comics debuted their new Bulletman character in the spring of 1940's Nickel Comics, issue 1. This was Jim Barr, Human Bullet, the Bulletman. His father was a cop who was gunned down by mobsters, and on his deathbed asked his son, Jim Barr, to join the force, following generations of Barrs serving the public. He was too young to go to the academy, but he developed an interest in ballistics, earning him the nickname Bullet. He eventually went to join the police department and failed. So, here's the lesson for the kids. He took some drugs, made a super soldier formula, sort of like Steve Rogers, and then made a gravity regulator helmet from the police station and transformed into Bulletman. He'd go out and fight crime, joined by his girlfriend, Bullet Girl. He later joined the Crime Crusaders Club with people like his girlfriend, Bullet Dog, and even Captain Marvel Jr. The series didn't last a long while, and so by the time Fawcett's line was scooped up by Charlton and later DC, Bulletman was in the public domain. And it's well known that Charlton wasn't the best at updating and protecting their copyright and trademarks. DC Comics, of course, thought they owned his rights. He even appeared with his girlfriend as part of Shazam's Squadron of Justice in 1976's Justice League of America issue 135. Hasbro picked up the character as well, but circumvented publishing rights rules by making a comic book story as an advertisement in Marvel Comics' Daredevil issue 136. also in 1976. This was in service of promoting their new action figure, a strategy that worked exceptionally well for Hasbro during the 80s ARAH era. For the toy, they got creative, made him a bit different, very recognizable, but different enough from the Fawcett character. You got the metal arms, those made him pretty different, I guess. In the comic strip ad insert, Bulletman, the human bullet, stopped a flooding river to save a town and then linked up with the adventure team, which was Eagle-Eye Joe and Atomic Man, and Bulletman exclaimed that together they'd turn the adventure team into the super adventure team, and it launched into a Three Musketeers bit to close out that short story. The 1976 Hasbro G.I. Joe Club magazine advertised Bulletman as well. It says the adventure team depends on Bulletman to complete missions that require superhuman abilities. Faster than the speed of light, more powerful than a dynamo, Bulletman's steel arms and helmet streamline his body, enabling him to streak through the air. The toy came with some string to kind of make him fly around, air quotes around the word fly. It's more like zip lining, but whatever. The UK Palitoy version also had rockets on his boots to create the play scenario. Hasbro was all about this and was boasting about their new super adventure team in 76's Toy Fair magazine too, writing proudly that everyone's going to be watching when the team meets the intruder. That's the strongman from another world, their enemy. It's there they laid out their plan to blow up their sales with TV advertising, TV promotions with spot TV heavy-ups in top markets to launch the G.I. Joe Super Adventure Team Action Pack promotion. It also said to watch these four tough guys in kids' second favorite media, National Comics. It says in April, Marvel Comics, the team would clash with the intruder. And so that would end up being those comic inserts. And so Bulletman's life with Hasbro, Marvel, and DC was relatively short-lived, though he stayed on in the United Kingdom with Palitoy and Action Man until the mid-80s, when that maker shuttered in 84. UK ads bragged about his penetration power, which, well, they were wild for that. I do wonder about his neck, though. He should have a neck brace or some sort of helmet like Juggernaut, or he's gonna be really hurting. Might need a chiropractor. In 1978, Bulletman was featured in an Action Man mini-story called Dangerous Days. This short story found Bulletman working with Action Man on a cable car. Oh, I should point this out too. Notice that his name is two words, Bullet and Man. That type of subtle change is how people can get around trademark law. He snuck into Marvel's A Real American Hero issue 148 in the spring of '94, but it was in the form of an advertisement for G.I. Joe Headquarters Quarterly Magazine issue 8. He was yelling at Cobra Scum in that magazine. Fast forward about 18 years, and we find ourselves in the IDW Publishing era of G.I. Joe comic books. This is where Bulletman was reintroduced, and though it wouldn't be revealed yet for a couple years, Bulletman's name went from Fawcett-era Jim Barr to having the government name Richard Ruby. Ruby was born in Clyde, Ohio, and went through school excelling in sports. He failed to pick up a scholarship, though, so he joined the United States Navy, becoming a naval aviator at first. When Operation Eagle Claw failed, the Navy stood up SEAL Team 6, and so Ruby joined DevGru, Task Force Blue. After an honorable discharge, Ruby found himself in Hollywood, California, working as a stunt pilot, finding work on film projects like Sky Cowboy and Space Battle. It was on Space Battle where this version of Ruby developed his jetpack, flight suit, and damage-proof vac metal equipment. He even used it to save the town of Poverty Flat, California from a flood, which was a reference to his comic strip insert from the 70s. That's when Joe Colton and Mike Power recruited him to the Super Adventure Team. After the Atomic Man died, Colton moved on to stand up a new counter-terrorist rapid deployment force, codenamed G.I. Joe, and so Ruby became the face of the Adventure Team. He continued taking work from Hollywood, even working alongside Courtney Krieger, aka CoverGirl, on a reality show called Survival Extreme to stop pirates. We're going to come back to that in a second. After that, Ruby had a starring role with Colonel John Hart in Sigma 6-2 Retribution. Since then, he's continued to find work in the B-movie and straight-to-home video realm. Interestingly, the Hasbro Heroes sourcebook from 2017 makes note that Ruby has several ex-wives. Several. I told you that penetration power would come in handy. It also says that his first comic book appearance in this continuity is 2013's G.I. Joe issue 3, so that series is where we head next. It was here that he joined Joe Colton at Q-Course graduation. That's when some Special Forces soldiers graduate at SFQC, the Special Forces Qualification Course. That's the Q. This is where they would get their berets, graduate, and find their way to an ODA. Issue 6 of that same series gave us a flashback to the Survival Extreme show and a glimpse of Team Mayday and Ruby's Team Ballistic. They then took on those pirates, though Krieger did most of the work. In 2016, IDW's line was on the road to a massive event called Revolution. Bulletman showed up in that summer's Zero issue of Revolution Prelude. The entire event started with a look at Bulletman with Adventure Team driving around in their ATV and Big Trapper. But that was it, and it was just a flashback by Colton while talking with Scarlet. The prelude quickly pivoted to the other factions and players that would all soon collide in Revolution. He later appeared in Revolutionaries with Joe Colton, That's G.I. Joe, Lonzo Wilkinson, aka Stalker, Miles Mannheim, aka Mayhem, and together they formed Adventure Force. They attacked General Garrison Blitz Krieger to save Mike Power, but they didn't get to him in time. Mike was KIA. They did, though, immediately link up with a time-displaced Sergeant Savage from the Screaming Eagles. This was a flashback in the story to 1994 and Project Iceman, the work that woke up Savage. This story is where the whole Joe Colton is actually Baron Ironblood switch happened. I know. So then he showed up in 2018's Optimus Prime annual. In the story, Starscream was the ruler of Cybertron, but he was jealous that the people of Earth were worshipping Optimus Prime, and so he commissioned a movie to be made to garner favor in the eyes of the Earthlings. How's that for a plot? He went to Marissa Fairborn at the Earth Embassy on Cybertron to get the plan in motion and to have Thundercracker star as himself in the biopic. That's when Marissa called in her producer friend, Richard Ruby, now former Bulletman. Ruby later had to break the news to him that the film bombed hard. Bulletman was back in his suit for 2018's Transformers Unicron issue 5. It was all hands on deck inside Trypticon to kill the new ELE threat, which was Unicron. In 2020, during Rob Liefeld's Dead Game miniseries, Snake Eyes was taking on Kerrigan based on an ancient Arashikage prophecy, and so he was fighting some bad guys. In issue 3 of that miniseries, Snake Eyes was fighting Kerrigan's daughter Olympia. That left Storm Shadow to fight Kerrigan himself, and in the middle of that battle, none other than Bulletman flew in and punched the villain into the ground. But Kerrigan was too powerful and swatted the human bullet aside, calling for his mystical sword to finish the job. And that's when Snake Eyes, Storm Shadow, and Scarlet teamed up with the Adventure Team to fight back. As they fought, Joe revealed that in his continuity, their team was G.I. Joe's secret weapon against supernatural threats. Unfortunately, Kerrigan and Olympia managed to escape by teleporting away. And so he's still out there somewhere. Will he show up in an Image Skybound series at any time? Will the rest of the Adventure Team? We'll have to wait and see. In 2014, Creon made a human bullet figure for one of their blind packs. Then there was something close. Strike Force Alpha's The Lost Squad featured Baron Steel, Atomic Mike, instead of Mike Power, and Johnny Bullet. Different character though. Then Fresh Monkey Fiction hosted Devil's Bargain Toys at Joe Fest 2023, and they brought a new 1/18 scale Bulletman, complete with a new card. Fresh Monkey Fiction had wanted to bring Bulletman to the present and included him in the Amazing Heroes Kickstarter, but that ultimately didn't move forward. Those are nice modern updates from both of those makers. But what do you think of Bulletman and how he fits into Adventure Team and G.I. Joe lore? Sound off in the comments and we'll keep chatting down there. Alright, that's a wrap on this one, my friends. I'm Jesse, this is JLS Comics, and I'll see you soon.